The New Jersey law against discrimination talks about the issue of damages in employment discrimination cases. And people always ask me, if I have an employment case, if I'm harassed or if I'm discriminated against, what are my damages? And essentially, the law says there's a couple of areas where you can recover as a discriminated against or harassed employee. And the first component is your wage loss. If you were forced to resign from a job because you're sexually harassed and you can't take it anymore, or if you're fired for an illegal reason, such as your age, your race, your religion, even your sexual orientation, you're entitled for the lost wages arising out of that termination. So if it takes you a year to find a comparable job and you can document that you have $100,000 in wage loss, your economic damages claims would essentially be that $100,000 that you've lost because of the illegal conduct of the employer. Now, the law doesn't stop there. There's also a recovery for emotional distress damages. A lot of times in employment cases, because we're talking about such egregious conduct and because of just the nature of the employer-employee relationship, a lot of times victims of discrimination and harassment encounter psychiatric injury, where they seek counseling or treatment, and they can prove to a jury through witnesses that they have a condition, a psychiatric condition, arising out of the discrimination or the harassment. These matters are serious, and the courts allow for that type of recovery. The other aspect of a discrimination claim is punitive damages. These damages are very real in discrimination cases, and they're allowable when the conduct of the employer is intentional or overly reckless, and the employer is going out of their way to discriminate against you or harass you. And a lot of times courts look to whether or not employers have effective anti-discrimination policies in their workplace when they're deciding the reasonableness of punitive damages. Employers are required to have training, to have an effective policy so that if you feel like you're discriminated against, you know as an employee where to go and how these things are handled. So those are the types of issues the courts look at with punitive damages. Also, if there's a high-level supervisor who's doing the harassment or the discrimination, like an owner or a vice president of a company, the company is more likely to have punitive damages assessed against them just because of the nature of the harassment. It's coming from a very high-up employee. Lastly, in employment cases, the courts allow a reasonable attorney's fee if you're successful at trial. So, in other words, you bring an employment case, you win it, and you're entitled to have the employer pay all of your counsel fees and costs if you prevail in that sexual harassment or discrimination case.